Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and today I was super excited to review this book because I have been reading through the Heebie-Jeebies series, which I did just finish the very last book in the Heebie-Jeebies series. So sad to be done, but it's always nice to be done. So I will be talking about this book very soon, but one of the authors of this series, there were two authors, Rod Randall and Paul Buchanan. And one of the authors, Paul Buchanan, also wrote stories for the FrightTime series. I discovered it a little bit by accident because I was looking up the bibliography of Paul Buchanan, wondering what else has he written? I'm curious. And then I discovered, wait a minute, FrightTime. He wrote stories for FrightTime? I want to read those and see how they compare. So I did. I read FrightTime, and I believe this is the third book in the series. They didn't start numbering them until later, but this one is another collection of three, pretty much novellas that are all spooky stories put into this one collection. I just gotta say, there is something interesting that can happen sometimes with authors. Sometimes when they get paired up with the right editor, they strike gold. I just gotta say, Paul Buchanan paired up with Larkin and Hanft was gold. There are three stories in this book, and Paul Buchanan's is the last one, Kid Willie's Ghost. So I'm going to talk about that one last, because I have some stuff to say about it. But first, before you get to that story, there are two other stories in this collection. Now, I've read one other collection of FrightTime books, and that one, it was good. The first story I thought was good, and then the second story was not very good, and then the third story was interesting and probably the best of those three, but none of those three rose to the level of this collection. This particular collection of stories was just A game after A game. Now, I will say, Kid Willie's Ghost is probably the best story in this particular collection, but Terror Town and Medal of Horror, the other two stories, can't sleep on those. They were both really good too. So Terror Town is a story about a kid who has a newspaper route that he's doing for his older brother who's off at camp for a week. And as he's doing this paper route, he notices something strange. It seems like people before sunrise, if he comes across them on his paper route, they are not the same as they are after the sun rises. In fact, they seem a little ghoulish. What is going on? What is happening? You have to read this one to find out. I will say, the first FrightTime book also had the first story was about a paper route, but this one's way better than that one. It's almost like they took the paper route idea and then amped it up to an 11 here in this particular collection. This short story was so well done and so creepy, and I think it had a pretty good twist. Even if the twist is kind of unexplained, you're a little like, wait, what? And then there's no explanation about it. I thought it was still really good. Now, this particular story has some body horror in it that is very disturbing. There is one particular scene that I did not like reading. It was so creepy and so gruesome, and I just thought, nope, that is not for me. I am going to skip down a paragraph because I don't want to read that. It was so creepy and disturbing, and I kept thinking, how did this get into a kid's book? Like, it is way more intense than any other middle grade horror thing that I've ever read for middle grade readers. For YA readers, I've read other things that are a little more intense than that, but for a middle grade book, this was very intense and was so disturbing. It wasn't as much creepy, I guess. It was much more disturbing in how it played out. It just was so creepy. I think there's some great action scenes in this first story. It just was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it a ton. It really had a good, oh no, can you get away? Are you going to be able to escape kind of feeling to it? I loved it. I thought it was so great. The second story in this one is Medal of Horror. And I will say this one, I could see it being bothersome to some people. There's a lot of really creepy imagery around drowning, and I feel like that could be a little bit too much for some people possibly. But this story was so creepy. I feel like this one was more on the creepy level than disturbing. It was so just ominous the entire time. In this particular story, these two kids move into a new neighborhood, like always happens in a spooky book, and they discover this strange pond in the forest behind their house. And they decide to go swimming in the pond because the main character, he loves to swim. It's one of his favorite things to do. He was on the swim team at his last school. So they're swimming, and his little brother gets stuck underwater. And as he pulls him up and gets him free of the weeds that are under the water, he finds something in the water. It's some kind of necklace of some kind. He pulls it out, and that's when the creepy things start to happen, because something has followed them home from the pond, and it is not nice. This one had a really great mystery to it. I felt like it really built up pretty well. It had some great moments where they're solving the mystery, trying to figure things out, see what's going on. And I thought that was all really well done and a lot of fun. And it kind of offset the very ominous tone of this story. It's just an ominous story. That is the best word for it. It has a great ending. I think it wraps up pretty well. It doesn't have as much of a twist ending. It's more of a wrapped up ending, but it was satisfying. It kind of reminds you of like at the end of a movie when everything has gone wrong and then the characters are kind of all huddled under blankets after the police have arrived and the ambulance is there and everything is fine and the sun is rising. That's kind of the feeling of the end of this one. So you make it through to the end, but it's just ominous all the way through. And I really, really thought that this was a creepy story all the way. So then the third story, this is the one I really want to talk about. Kid Willie's Ghost. This story almost made me cry. It was so well written. This is the one that was written by Paul Buchanan, who also wrote books in the Heebie-Jeebie series. And I just gotta say, I think that he was paired with the right editor here, because in the Heebie-Jeebie series, Paul Buchanan has written some really good books in that series, and some of them have been really well done, and you can see Paul Buchanan's shining like writing ability and skill in this particular story. When Paul Buchanan is at his best, he is weaving a story together with a theme that is very organic and very strongly played out throughout each element of the story. It's almost like nothing is wasted. And that is what Paul Buchanan does here in this story. He doesn't waste a moment in getting things together and keeping it together and making everything organic, fitting all the pieces together and making it a really great story. There is definitely a creepy atmosphere. And I will say, this is a baseball story. So here's the basic premise. It starts off with this kid who is playing baseball in his little league, and he's out by the outfield, and he's kind of near like a fence that's shadowy and there's woods behind it. And as he's out in the outfield, he sees another player who's nearby. And the ball comes flying towards them, and it falls near that player, and he's shouting at the player to get the ball, and the player just doesn't get it. And then the kid runs over, grabs the ball, and then looks up, and that other kid is gone. Come to find out that he has seen the ghost of Kid Willie, who haunts the baseball diamond, and whoever sees Kid Willie's ghost disappears forever in only a few short days. So the kids are trying to figure out how to stop this, how to not disappear forever, and it is such a good story. So good. Now, I will say, like I was about to say, this was a baseball story, and I like to watch baseball in person. I think it's fun to watch, like if you're at the stadium, it's really a fun atmosphere. It's a lot of fun to see the game, but I'm not like a big baseball fan, so I don't like know all the teams and know all the players. I'm not super into baseball. I didn't really play baseball as a kid, so I just was a little bit like, oh no, it's a baseball story. Am I gonna be bored by this? I was not bored. This was so good. It was so good. The storyline just takes off from that moment at the baseball diamond and just continues and does not let up. And it is so ominous. There is a wonderful mystery in this story. That's such a good mystery. It had twists and turns that I did not see coming. I kept thinking, oh wait, did this happen or this happen? And this story got me. It totally got me and made me think one thing and then this other thing and then this other thing. It was so well constructed. This was just such a well constructed story. And Paul Buchanan really pulls out all the stops at the very end and pulls everything together in such a great way that has such a tone of sadness. There is, in this story, I feel like it's a story about lost dreams. The things that we wish we could do that we just never get the chance to do. And then we find ourselves at a place where maybe we do have a chance to do something for the first time after a long time, and it means everything. And that's all I can say about it, because I do not want to spoil this story for you. This one is worth finding to read. It just was that good. Even if you skip the other two stories, read Kid Willie's Ghost. I just can't say enough good things about that story. It was so well done. Overall, I really enjoyed this collection of FrightTime stories. It was way better than the first book. I thought it was much more well constructed. The stories were all kind of different. They had different vibes to them. They had different sorts of characters. They were just well done. I really enjoyed it. I will say, each one of these stories has a boy main character with a female sidekick. And the female sidekicks are kind of all the same. And so to me, that is a little bit of a ding to these books. Like the female sidekicks, they're just kind of there to be a person to talk to and to like bounce ideas off of instead of actually being major participants in the story and bringing something to the table. So I thought that was a tiny bit weak, but overall though, this whole collection was so good. It was so good. So I definitely give this FrightTime collection a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. The first two stories, like I said, they're both solid, good stories, but Kid Willie's Ghost just took this thing to a home run because it was so well constructed. I haven't read a novella or short story that well constructed in a very long time. It was so good. So definitely, if you can find this one, go find it. Go read this collection. You will not be disappointed. I definitely think from the body horror of Terror Town to just the ominous feeling of Medal of Horror, and then to just the poignancy of the last story of Kid Willie's Ghost. You will I think you're going to like all three of these stories. If you like middle grade spooky stories, you can't go wrong with this collection. I feel like I can't say enough good stuff about this one. Go find it. Go read it. In fact, I think I'm going to change my rating. I'm going to give this 5 stars. The more I'm thinking about it, it's a 5-star. I give this 5 stars out of 5 stars. It was that good. I enjoyed it that much. I will definitely be reading more in the FrightTime series, and especially more by Paul Buchanan. I want to read more of his stories because I believe he has 3 other ones in the FrightTime series. I don't have any of the other ones that he's written one for, so I will have to go track those down, but I'm definitely going to go find them because I want to read them. They were that well done. So, until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye!